So coming in at number 8 will be Elvis Andrus, 2011 Elvis Andrus for the Texas Rangers. So in that year, he was pretty much 50-50 with his splits for his contact versus righties and lefties. He never really had much power, had 5 home runs for the year. This will be a prototypical solid shortstop card if they do decide to release it. Defense is solid, vision's good, plate discipline, fielding, all that stuff's good to above average. None of it's great, and he's not gonna hit you any home runs or anything like that. Overall, I mean, this would just be a solid card, and he comes in at 87 overall. So I definitely think we'll probably see an Elvis Andrus due to there just not being many great shortstops out there. So here's to hopefully seeing Elvis Andrus in MLB 16 the show as a Coming in at number 7 is the 2011 Asdrubal Cabrera for the Cleveland Indians. So let's talk about his year he had for 2011. Overall, he did have 25 home runs, and that was his best year by far. If you go by power or by overall WAR, whatever it may be, it definitely was his best year. Drove in 92 runners, scored 87 runs. He had a 273 batting average, 330 on base. So overall, he had a pretty solid offensive year. If we take a quick look at his attributes, they're kind of different. And keep in mind, he is a switch hitter, so a lot of switch hitters have splits like this. Like, for instance, they'll have better contact on one side of the plate, yet they'll have, more power on the other side of the plate. Sometimes it just works like that. So his contact for righties is, average, 62. He hit about like 250 or 260, I think, against righties that year. His contact for lefties is very good, coming in at 88. And power versus righties. Now, this is where you're going to get most of his power, and that's where he got most of his home runs at that year against righties, batting from the left-handed side. Power against lefties, just not much power there. Slugging and ISO just wasn't very good. Vision and discipline, not great either. Look at his fielding. He's probably average overall. Not a great fielder. Reaction's going to kind of hurt his range a little bit. But overall, I think something to look forward for this card is the fact he is a switch hitter, and he does have that 70 power versus righties if they decide to put a card like this in the game. So hopefully we'll see Asdrubal Cabrera in MLB 16 show. Coming in at number 6 is the 2008 90 overall Hanley Ramirez for the Miami Marlins. So that year he did hit 33 home runs. He scored 125 runs, drove in 67. He's also more of a speed threat back then. So if you look at his speed and stealing, it's pretty adequate, pretty solid. His defense was, again, pretty solid. What he lacked, or what he had, was good range, but he lacked making the routine plays that year. So if you look at his arm strength and reaction, he can make the good plays deep in the hole, backhand, whatever, but he will mess up a few balls hit right at him. So looking at his contact and power, so Hanley's kind of another interesting hitter. He doesn't hit lefties at all very well, never has in his career. So this is going to be a shortstop, bats right-handed, who's really only going to be useful against right-handed hitting. That being said, he is a very solid hitter, especially for a shortstop against right-handed hitting. He would come in at 88 contact versus righties and 78 power. And then against lefties, just not very good at all. And that year, he did have good plate discipline. And this was actually a very, very good year for Hanley Ramirez. Not only for Hanley Ramirez, but for any shortstop ever. This was one of the better years for a shortstop. He came in with a 7.5 WAR. But something that San Diego Studios doesn't implement into their algorithms for shortstop, the shortstop overall, they don't put a heavy emphasis on things like plate discipline, and that's where Hanley Ramirez was so valuable at the year, and how he was able to score so many runs. He drew a lot of walks, saw a lot of pitches, and that's just something it's kind of hard to transition over to a video game. But nonetheless, still a valuable card, and hopefully we'll see this in MLB 16 this year. In at number 5 is 2012 Desmond, coming at 91 overall for the Washington Nationals. Now, this is a card that really surprised me. When I looked at his metrics, I didn't think he would have pop out that good of an overall. I figured, he'd be 80s or so. But yeah, he popped out a 91, and a lot of the reason for that was just his hitting, and his defense was good enough to keep him up there. keep in mind that a lot of weight is put on defense for shortstops, and I try to be fair as possible when I do look at their defensive metrics. It's something that's hard to grade. It's probably one of the hardest things to compile this list of shortstops. So that being said, in 2012, Ian Desmond had 25 home runs with 73 RBIs, so he did have power, and if you look, he got most of his power against left-handed pitching, although his power versus righties was not bad either. It's going to be in the mid-60s. I gave him a 67. That year, he hit 292 overall. I gave him 86 contact versus righties, and he hit a little better against lefties. Durable player. Again, same for Hanley. He can make great plays. He's got a good arm. He'll just kind of boot the routine plays. Balls hit right at him. But again, his arm strength kind of makes up for it. So yeah, he came out at 91 overall. Now, if I had to rank these guys, I would say Hanley definitely had a better year, but this is kind of what the attributes gave us. So you guys may disagree, but this is number 5, and hopefully we see Ian Desmond in MLB 16 this year. So coming at number 4 on our list is the 2011 version of Troy Tulowitzki. Kind of know what you guys are thinking. You know, he's too low. I mean, he was already a diamond this year, but to me, he's not the same player as what he used to be. Especially, you know, 2011, 2010. In 2011, he hit 30 home runs, and he just, not to say he doesn't have the talent anymore, just hasn't stayed healthy. But again, he hit 30 home runs, drove in 105 runners, scored 81 runs, had a good walk rate, good K rate. So you see his discipline and vision are pretty solid. Contact versus righties, he hit about like 280 against righties, but against lefties, he hit like 350. He's absolutely going to stroke left-handed pitching. As you see, 99 contact versus lefties, 95 power versus lefties, not quite maxed out. And he's got 73 power versus righties, so it's kind of similar to the card that's already in the game, but I think it's going to be a little bit better. And of course, you take a look at his fielding, his arm strength is definitely his strength, and his overall fielding is good as well. Again, in 2011, that was probably his best defensive year, so this should be a good defensive card. But overall, this is probably a card you probably want to try to platoon. I mean, if you have somebody better against right-handed pitching, this would be a great platoon card. But hopefully we see this card in MLB 16 to show. Coming in at number 3 on our list is the 2006 version of Jose Reyes, and he would come in at a 97 overall. So, taking a quick glance at his stats for that year, he did have 19 home runs, so his power is going to be a little higher than what you're used to seeing for Jose Reyes. Also, he hit exactly 300 that year, had a 7.5% walk rate, so you look at his play discipline, not the greatest. K rate was 11.5%, so his vision is going to be very good. So again, let's talk about this card. He's a switch hitter. Is probably going to have the highest contact overall. I'm not sure if anybody else had higher contact, but he's going to be a switch hitter. You know, he's going to be a card you can use at all times, and it's not going to be affected when someone brings in a lefty or righty out of the bullpen. And then don't let those power numbers fool you. 58, 56 power is pretty solid. I don't know if MLB The Show, if they do bring this card back, I'd assume they bring the 2006 one, because that's the year the Mets were really good and he had his best season. But yeah, I would expect if they brought that card back, he'd have power, you know, in the high 50s, maybe low 60s, because he did have 19 home runs overall that year. So don't let the power numbers fool you. You'll still be able to hit home runs with him fairly decent, but this contact's just amazing. His defense overall is pretty solid as well. Good arm strength, good reaction. And let's not sleep on the fact that dude had 64 stolen bases that year. He was a huge threat to steal bases, and he had a lot more speed. I mean, he still has good speed now, but definitely had a lot more speed and was a threat on the base path. So hopefully we see this card in MLB 16. Coming in at number 2 on our list is the 2007 MVP version, Jimmy Rollins. So that year he had 30 home runs, scored 139 runs, and he drove in 94 runners. So they kind of moved Jimmy Rollins all over the lineup, so that's kind of why some years he had just a high number of RBIs. But this year he had good RBIs and good run totals, and he had those 30 home runs. Overall, it was definitely his best year, 6.5 WAR. So let's start talking about his attributes. Contact versus righties. Again, this is one of these guys that he kind of has higher contact on one side and more power on the other. So on the right side, he's going to have a little more power, 78 power with 82 contact, still solid. And on the left side, his contact's going to be a little higher, actually a lot higher, 92. And his power versus lefties is going to be still solid at 73, but he got most of his, I shouldn't say most of his power, but he got a little bit more power against right-handed pitching that year. Overall, he was a solid fielder. Jimmy Rollins, I looked at his metrics, and overall, he wasn't a player that had just great range. He made the routine plays, made them consistently. So that's why you see that 87 arm accuracy and 78 fielding, just a stable fielder that you always could rely on. Speed, he did still a little bit bases back then. 2007, he had 41 stolen bases. So I gave him 84 stealing with a 74 speed. So in my opinion, guys, I think this is going to be the best card. The fact he's a switch hitter and he's got the power in the 70s. I would take this card over Jose Reyes just because I'm a guy that likes power. So let me know what you guys think. If you'd rather have Jose Reyes or Jimmy Rollins. I gave Jimmy Rollins a slight edge. They're both coming at 97 though, and hopefully we see 2007 MVP version of Jimmy Rollins. So coming in number 1 on our list is the 2002 Alex Rodriguez, 99 overall for the Texas Rangers. In my opinion, this was his best year. He did possess a 10 WAR for that year. He had some really good years though, so it was kind of hard just to pick one, but in my opinion, this was his best year. I believe he also won MVP this year. But anyways, let's get into his stats for that year. He had a career high 57 home runs, scored 125 runs, and drove in 142. Overall, his average was 300. So I kind of know what you guys are thinking probably. Why is his contact versus lefties 47? Well, it is a fact. He did hit 230, like 238 that year against lefties, which would put him under 50. Against righties, he was, I think, 330, 320, something like that. Same thing for the power against righties. His power was he nearly had a 700 slugging versus righties. Got most of his home runs against righties. Power versus lefties wasn't bad, but it's only going to come in at 74 overall. For his fielding, again, this is probably one of his best years defensively. Solid fielder, had good range, made the routine plays, had a good arm. And he was just a lot more athletic in 2002 than what he was now, or before he went to third base for the Yankees. But in my opinion, they're definitely going to bring in an A-Rod. They're probably going to do a rookie one and then a prime one. So I would expect the 2002 version to be a prime, although he does have very unorthodox splits. So I don't even know if I would use this card over a card like Jimmy Rollins, but you know, if I had the opportunity to take it, of course I would. So let me know what you guys think. Did you guys agree with this order, or do you disagree? And if the ratings are like this, which they should be, because that's all I look at are the stats and I plug them in. Would you guys use a card like Alex Rodriguez, or would you rather use somebody like Jose Reyes or Jimmy Rollins? Let me know, guys. So this is going to wrap up our list. Alex Rodriguez coming out number 1. And before we end the video, I want to throw in some honorable mentions. So you guys are probably asking, you know, where are some of these players at? Well, I'll go ahead and tell you why they weren't in the top 8. So I have, here are the honorable mentions. I have Johnny Peralta, 2013, 2011, Starlin Castro, 2013, Jed Lowry, 2004, Juan Uribe, 2009, Clint Barnes, and 2010, Alexei Ramirez. So yeah, all these cards are going to be coming in at less than 85. Some of them could have pushed for the top 8. I just don't believe any of them would have made it though. And right now I have Juan Uribe up. If you guys want to take a quick look at his attributes, I actually did him. But yeah, those are my honorable mentions. And again, shortstop was very difficult to do because a lot of the overall rating is dependent on the defensive rating, which in my opinion is the hardest thing to grade when you go back, especially when you go back like 5-10 years. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any other honorable mentions to throw in there, or if you think any of these honorable mentions I mentioned should be in the game. And here's a quick look at Alexei. So that's gonna wrap up the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is Cardinal Bird 5 signing out. Peace.